Hi, my name's Cathy Skipper and I'm a menopause midwife. Welcome to my channel, The Alchemy of Menopause. In this video, I'm going to be touching on two themes. One is the mother archetype and why it's important and why it comes up to be healed during perimenopause and beyond. And two, I'm going to give you some journaling prompts and show you how some shadow work that I did enabled me to go deeper into healing my own mother archetype or inner mother archetype. I'm going to use my notes just to keep an eye on myself because I've mapped out the way I want to go through this so that it is the best and most effective form of video for you, and I don't want to ramble. So if you see me looking at my notes, that's why. So first of all, the mother archetype. Why is the mother archetype important at menopause when we're going out of our fertile years? Well, the easy answer to that is, and I'll put a link to a video that I did before on the triple goddess. So in the whole of the mythology that we can access over thousands of years, even going back to the ancient archaeological um, symbolism that archaeologists have discovered about the feminine, there's always this idea of the triple goddess, which is the maiden, the mother, and the crone. Now, just as a side note, I would say we're into the fourth aspect of the feminine archetypes, and that comes between the mother and the crone. We are not yet crones when we're 50, even though we may be out of our mothering fertile years. And that's what I call the sovereign years, which is from sort of 45 to 75 before we become the real wise older crone. So if we go back to the mother, the maiden, the mother, and the crone, it's not just because we get to menopause that we suddenly abandon the maiden part of ourself, the child, the prepubescent part of ourself. And we don't abandon the mother archetype within ourselves either. The idea is actually that we integrate them. And the potential at menopause is to go deeper into these parts of ourself as part of the underworld journey or transformational journey in order to heal finally parts of ourselves that are still wounded or still we haven't understood what happened or whatever it is. So the mother archetype is naturally going to come up at menopause. And you don't have to have been a mother yourself biologically, but you went through years of being fertile. So we all hold the mother archetype within us. We were all mothered by mothers who were mothered by mothers who were mothered by mothers, and we all were fertile. So we were, all had the potential within us to be biological mothers. And surely many of you, even if you weren't mothers, mothered others in some way or another. The mother archetype is central to the feminine in her, the consciousness of the feminine or the entire feminine archetype. Mother archetype is part of that and a huge part of it. The ultimate mother archetype is the great mother, Mother Earth, Pachamama, whatever you want to call her. That's the ultimate mother archetype, without which none of us would be here and the planet wouldn't exist. The other thing to remember about the mother archetype, as with all archetypes, she's not all good and nurturing and motherly and nourishing. She also has a negative side to her or a darker side to her. And this is important to remember because Marion Woodman talked about this, the woman that I've talked about as being a big influence on my work. In our society, we tend not to look at the darker side of things. We don't want that to come through. We don't want to face the shadow. We don't want to face death. We don't want to face what's in the underworld. And by having this sort of mono external look at things, the risk is, and that I feel that we've done in our society, is to say mothers have to be all nourishing, all nurturing, all perfect mothers. And if we don't honor the side of the mother that gets frustrated, that doesn't want to be a mother at all times, who might feel like she wishes she hadn't had kids for that moment or whatever it is, if we don't honor that side of ourselves, as I've said in all my videos, that becomes part of the unconscious. We bury it. We don't want to see it. We've got to be this perfect mother that we've been educated to be and that society tells us to be. So this more negative aspects of how we feel as a mother gets buried. What gets buried in our unconscious becomes much more powerful. It has much more control over us. So that's where we get what Marion Woodman called the death mother or the devouring mother archetypes, and they become very virulent in our society. Okay, so what else did I want to say? Yes, so in order in order to move forward into these sovereign years in the best of our ability, to be the most creative that we can be, to stand up as sovereign women, sovereign to ourselves. We own ourselves. We know ourselves. There's no parts of ourselves that we haven't sort of unearthed and worked with, which gives us the ability to be safe within ourselves. The more we know ourselves, the safer we are within ourselves. And then that gives us the ability to what I believe is the role of the sovereign woman, which is to lead in her own way by being an example, by having really excavated all these different parts of herself and become more and more whole. And in order to do this, we need to look at our own mother archetype. What have we got within us? How did we mother our children if we had children? How were we mothered? And this is really shadow work. So I decided to do this video because I'd been doing some shadow work triggered by something that happened in one of my programs with someone who I've worked with for a long time, much younger than me, not yet in menopause, sort of, but followed the menopause program. And something happened that made me feel ill at ease. And it was my reaction to her situation. So let me begin by the shadow journaling prompts that began this process for me. And of course, now I look at it, these prompts took me into this situation with one of my students because it was in my field. It was something that had been bothering me and was still bothering me. But the prompt I want to share with you, and you can use yourself, is a journaling prompt for shadow work. And the prompt is, what triggers you to tense up physically? So what situation or what conversation triggers you or has triggered you in the past that you've realized, I'm really not feeling good about this? And once you start honing into the answer to that prompt, try and go back to that situation. How did it feel in your body? So that then once you've noticed how you felt that situation in your body, you can explore the emotions that went with that situation that triggered you. What I often do is I'll put a timer on for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and just sort of automatically write. I try and write from that feeling and that memory rather than from my head and see what comes up. And then once you've written for 5 or 10 minutes, then look at the themes, reread it and look at the themes that came up. And so that's what I did. That was the first journaling prompt I used. What triggered me, what gave me these intense feelings of not being comfortable? And it was this situation with my student. And so without going into details, my student was in a big life crisis. She has 2 young sons, and something very big and huge happened and dangerous regarding the past that came up into the now. I'm trying to tell you without giving you any details, and it made it very unsafe for her to be, and her children to be, where they were living with her partner. And so I knew about this because I'm very close to this person, and I'd advised her, to make sure she was safe and her children were safe. Anyway, she came to class. She's very happy. I feel really good. I've moved out. Somebody's lent me this small casita. And so she was very happy and talking about it. And, it was a big, intense time, but she knew it was meaningful. And then I realized as she was talking, she hadn't brought her kids with her. And I got quite angry or very strong. And I did so because I felt it in my body. Here's the trigger. I felt really uncomfortable and I felt angry. I have to say, I felt angry with her for moving herself into safety without her children. So I reacted in a way that was quite strong. And don't forget, I'm a teacher teaching a group, and it made me feel uncomfortable. And so when I was journaling on this, this is what came up, was these feelings of anger. I thought she was being unthoughtful about her children. I thought she was being irresponsible. And above all, I thought she was being selfish. And so when I explored these feelings that were coming up about my student, I realized that I had to ask myself, well, what was this saying about myself? Why was I angry at her? These were my feelings, and I was really projecting them onto her. Why was I feeling so intense about this? And I realized that I was projecting how I felt about myself as a young mum of 2 boys 30 years ago. And what's interesting about this is that I thought I dealt with it. I'll carry on. So don't worry, we'll get to the heart of this. So the other journaling question, the second journaling question, the questions went in two, was what's something I'm often embarrassed to admit to others? And of course, it links with this. I am often embarrassed to say what a terrible mother I was when I was 22, 23, 24, 25, maybe up to from 22 when I first got pregnant with my first son. I got pregnant with my second son at 23, and I was a terrible mother until I was 30. And I'm embarrassed about that. I'm not comfortable with that. I am horrified at how I treated my children, how selfish I was, how unthoughtful I was, how irresponsible I was. So, all the things that I felt my student was being. And of course, I'm not the person anymore. I'm 60. I've worked through it, or I thought I'd worked completely through it. I've spoken to my sons many times about their childhood. I have 4 sons now, but the 2 oldest were the ones that were with me as a very young, very wounded, very untogether, very irresponsible, very unthoughtful, very dissociated mother. So I've spoken to them so many times. We've talked about it. They've forgiven me. They've grown up. They're fathers themselves. We get on really well. So why, I wondered, did this get triggered? One, by my student. Why did I feel so cross with her? And again, why did it come up in this journaling prompt? What is this whole situation? And I realized that my sons have forgiven me. The whole thing's been dealt with in terms of them. What I realized as I went deeper into this and started journaling some more was that I was angry with my student because what I was seeing in her was this part of myself that I still had another layer to work on with. And this wasn't now about what my sons had been through, it was about this young 22-year-old mother who was greatly unprepared to be a mother, wasn't ready to be a mother, was a wounded child. And it was her that I was angry with. Or, I still haven't worked out, what am I angry with her? But I think more than that is that she is still within me angry with herself. She's let herself down. And emotions are coming up now. When I got pregnant, it was in a very, if you saw my last video, you'll know, it was in a very, very unhealthy way. And I haven't gone into the details with it to protect my son, but it was something that you can imagine and was horrific, and I stayed with because I was so codependent. Anyway, it's no excuse, but my young inner mother hasn't forgiven herself, feels so that she let herself down. I wanted to be the best mother. Like every mother, like every child who becomes a mother, like every woman who becomes a mother, I wanted to be the very best mother. But because I was so wounded and I hadn't sorted out any of my shit, I wasn't. And that part of me is still very angry with herself, is still very disappointed in herself, still feels like she betrayed herself. And this is the key to what came up for me. And as I journaled about this and felt her inside me, I could feel this deep sorrow, this deep sadness, this deep lack of self-worth, this deep shame that I carried, which I was projecting onto my client, onto my student, who I know extremely well. I've worked with for 5 years. So what I realized as I went one step deeper is that child part of myself who wasn't really capable of being a mother, even though I was 22, I was an adult. I wasn't adult enough. She needs mothering by my wiser, older self, by my 6-year-old self. She needs to be allowed to feel, allowed to recognize what she was feeling, but also reminded that it's okay. She did her best. She did what her best wasn't what she wanted to do, but we all survived. And this is really a deep part of the healing of what I can do now. I can help her. I can mother her. I will mother her. And so, what am I trying to say here? Well, yes, the other thing that I need to say here is that if you're working on something like this, the other thing that I have done over the years before it's only today that I got to this point where I realized I needed to mother her. I'd already looked back and realized that my own mothering by my mother was by a very wounded mother. So I've worked on that. And then I realized that my mother was from a mother line which was extremely wounded. My great-great-grandmother was the lost mother, taken off the lineage for being Indian, having her children taken away. So I've even healed the whole mother line and written a memoir about her, which I'm just finishing, just doing the last edits. So I've done all this work. But what I want to say is, it's the gift that keeps on giving. The mother archetype is so huge in the feminine consciousness that here I am 60. I've been through my menopause journey. I've done a lot of healing. I've come up from the underworld and I still have layers to heal. And I'm happy about that. To be able to look after this young 22-year-old who hates herself for being such a bad mother is a gift. It's a gift that my wiser, older self that I am now, not yet my wise crone, but I'm a sovereign woman, I can help her. I can help her heal within myself. And that's really what this deep journey of healing feminine consciousness is. And it's layer upon layer like the onion. Lastly, the last thing I want to say is that there is a gift in the wound. So that wound of being a not good enough mother, which is connected to my whole mother line, when I sort of got to an age where my kids were maybe 4 or 5 and I realized this cannot go on. I am not being the mother I wanted to be. I'm being a really bad mother. You know, I'm lucky my kids are still alive. When I realized that, it triggered my journey of healing that has been a journey for the rest of my life. A long journey. There was a lot to heal. The feminine consciousness is massive. We're hardly shown an inch of it by the society we live in. Hardly any of it is honored. So we have to do it on our own or with other women. But it triggered my healing journey. So there's a gift in the wound. And all the answers are within us. That's where shadow work is so great. I didn't realize when I just took that shadow quote this morning that it was going to lead me to sharing this video with you, because it was in the shadow. It's not my left brain. It's not my organized, scheduling, working, seeing linear things brain. No, it's the deep feminine. She is infinitely wise within us all. So if you like these videos, please subscribe to my channel. Share with me anything that comes up for you in the comments. And lots of love. See you in the next video.